32. अच्छा, कल एक वो असाइनमेंट भी है फिटिंग्स वाला, उसकी भी कॉपी करवानी है. Okay. So today, till the last class we have seen dimensional analysis. Today we will see internal flows. That is, we will see mainly flow in pipelines. And it is here when we talk of flow in pipelines, we'll introduce the concept of laminar and turbulent flow in the context of a pipeline. And this you'll realize will be one of the more at least you'll be able to relate to it in an engineering sense. Because so far what we have done, we have talked of flow and we have assumed inviscid flow throughout. Here we will see how to account for viscosity, and then what are the engineering approaches to finding the pressure drop when there is flow in a pipe. And then we start with straight pipes. Then we realize if you look at a typical pipeline system, you hardly have straight lines. There will be things where there will be bends, there will be turns, and so how much of a pressure drop does each of these things entail? Can we guess them? How do we work out these things? So, and the basic concept which we will also learn here without going through the details will be the concept of laminar flow and turbulent flow. So we are looking at flow in a pipe, and let us say the pipe has a flow in a pipe of a circular cross section. So pipe of length L, diameter D. Now for fully developed laminar flow, we have we have done this problem in the class. I think in the tutorial class we did it for flow in a pipe which was fully developed, steady state. That's what is implied when we talk of laminar flow. We did see how the velocity profile in a pipe looks like. And if you recall, this has a parabolic profile. What we got was Vz was equal to some constant into 1 minus r square upon r square, where k was related to the pressure gradient and viscosity. So this was the general form we had derived this. I'll come back to this exact thing, but now let's first we look at it is that the flow in a pipe becomes fully developed only after particular length. And we define L sub E, which we call as ये कोई बार बार बोले जा रहा है, क्यों बोल रहे हो भाई? बाहर जाके बात कर लो कभी तो. We define the entrance length as the region of flow in a pipe where velocity profile is not fully developed. And what we find is this is empirical observation, or and this may be, if I say the entrance length is a function of the diameter of the pipe, you would expect that the entrance length to be different in different diameter pipes, and then you would expect it to be a function of the average velocity of flow, density, and then viscosity. And then if you work out a non-dimensional relation between all these, you will get LE upon D is a function of Reynolds number, where RED is equal to rho VD upon mu or often you will find instead of rho VD upon mu, the Reynolds number being defined as V bar D upon nu, when nu is equal to mu upon rho. The kinematic viscosity. One is dynamic, the other is kinematic. So, and V bar is the average velocity. So this is what we find. And so V bar, this is defined as the average velocity is defined as the flow rate in the pipe divided by the area. They have already seen this. And Reynolds number has been defined by this. So now what is found is, I'll first introduce this without, and then I'll explain the meaning of laminar and turbulent. For laminar flow means Reynolds number is low. I'll come to that in a minute. But so for when do you expect the velocity profile to develop faster? If the speeds initially are very low or if they are very high? See, if they are low, then it will take some time before it becomes fully developed. Whereas the speed is high, then in an average sense, it will become fully developed much earlier. So what we get is, in laminar flow, and these again come from experiments, LE upon D is given by 0.06 times the Reynolds number, whereas in turbulent flow, this is equal to and what is the value, the laminar and turbulent value I'll come to in a minute. When is a flow laminar, when is a flow turbulent? But before that, let me now come to this concept of turbulence. And there was a pioneering series of experiments carried out by Osborne Reynolds, which he published in 1883. What he did was, he looked at flow in a pipe. And what he did was, the entry to the pipe was rounded off. There was a smooth sort of a cross section here, and he observed flow in a pipe. And how he observed it was, let's say it was flow of water, he put in a colored marker. He put a dye in the flow. So now what Reynolds observed was, when the average velocity, so there was some sort of an average velocity we talk of, there's a flow rate in the pipe divided by area. When this was low, what he found was, let me use a colored marker here. So if you introduce the marker for low velocities, he observed the marker moved in more or less a regular smooth line. Whereas when he increased the velocity and to a much higher limit, and he put in this marker here, so the marker followed some sort of an irregular pattern. Okay? It's the same flow. Now, when we do exact solutions, we do not get any differentiation on the basis of Reynolds number. What we get is, we get one solution which we can solve for is the parabolic profile. But for the same geometry, when Reynolds did the experiment, he observed different results. And that depended on the speed of the flow in the pipe. For lower speeds, it looked like a very simple flow where the pattern is just going in a straight line. So that means you can predict where it will be. Whereas for high speeds, he realized that you could not place this pattern. It was, the marker was just moving around in some random way. But the randomness was there, but at the same time, it moved and the movement was in some range. It was not that it was hitting the wall at all the time and going away. So there is some randomness, yet it is within some confines. So clearly these are two different patterns, and at intermediate velocities, he observed something like this, that the flow would go into a state where it would show this marking, then it would become smooth for some time, then again it would show something like this, then it would go like this, and so on. So this is what we can term as an intermittent state. That there are two types of solutions, a simple solution and a random solution, and in some intermediate ranges of velocities, you do find these states where it sort of switches between the two states. So now, what he coined the term was, let me again go back to my... So this flow is what he termed as laminar flow, whereas the flow where we had a perpetual random type of motion was termed as turbulent, and this would be what we would call as the transition. And what Reynolds did was, he carried out a series of experiments, and he found that this change from laminar to turbulent was governed by not V bar alone, but on the value of V bar multiplied by D divided by nu. So that means it did the experiments with different pipes of different diameters and different fluids. And it turned out it depended on this ratio. And this ratio is what we call as the Reynolds number. And what is generally what he proposed was, or what he found out was, that when Reynolds number was less than, he gave this number 2300. Somehow it has become a sacrosanct number, or whenever you talk of pipe flows, you hear of this number as the critical Reynolds number, below which the flow is always laminar. And at least what he said was, when RED is greater than 2300, the flow is turbulent. But now what we know is that in controlled experiments, we can even have laminar flow up to RED is equal to 10,000. So that means this 2300 is not a sacrosanct limit. It is a limit in the sense that definitely if Reynolds number is less than 2000, even if you introduce a lot of disturbances at the inlet, they will die down, the flow becomes smooth. And once you cross 10,000, even if you make very smooth flow with no disturbances, it will show these random variations. And between 2000 to 10,000, somewhere is the range of transition, where if you introduce some disturbances, they will definitely magnify and the flow becomes turbulent. Now this study of how flow changes from laminar to turbulent is under the realm of what we call stability theory. Because stability theory talks of, if you have one solution and you perturb it, then does it go back to the original thing or does it go somewhere else? And here also you see we have two types of solutions. One solution which is the parabolic profile, which is steady, which is one-dimensional or two-dimensional, Vz is a function of R. And the second solution, which is unsteady, clearly velocity is changing with time. And not only that, we have all the three components of velocity. Vr, v theta, Vz are there. They may be small, but they are there, they are not non-zero, and they keep on fluctuating. And this fluctuating flow is what we call as the turbulent flow. Now, one thing what one could probably think of is whether the flow is laminar or turbulent. How does it matter to us if I have this, what God has given me or what I have created, and I think is God's gift to me, called CFD, computational fluid dynamics. I plug in everything and solve the equations. So then I should get the turbulent solution. Now it turns out life is not so easy. And the reason for that is that you'll also realize once the flow becomes turbulent, the scales at which velocities change, they become smaller and smaller. In a laminar flow, it's all a smooth flow, you have a parabolic profile. So therefore the scales at which velocity changes are of a much bigger magnitude. Whereas in a turbulent flow, the changes come with time, with x and y over a very small distance. So now from a computational viewpoint, what will happen when you have changes taking place at small times and small lengths? Can anyone guess? What will be the difference if I have to carry out a computational simulation of a smooth flow where changes are taking place over large lengths, vis-a-vis a flow where changes are taking place very randomly? I will need, when I make a grid, we'll need a very fine mesh. All these solutions, when we do in numerical methods, we make a mesh of the whole domain. Now that mesh has to be finer, And if we are talking of time scales, in one case if the flow is steady, I just have to do it at one time. If the flow is unsteady, then I also have to do a time solution. And if this time scale is small, I have to make my time step very, very small. And actually it so happens that even today, with the biggest of the computers, we cannot resolve even simple flows for Reynolds number more than, let's say, 50,000, 100,000. We'll not be able to solve because it requires so much of computational effort. Because you have to create so many grid points. And actually, we are not going to go into the theory of turbulence. That helps us to predict what is the smallest scale. And you have to be at least of that order of that smallest scale. Your grid size, your time grid has to be of that order. If you're a bigger scale, then you will miss out all these. So these solutions will never come up. You will not be able to catch the turbulent solution, or it will not converge. When you try to do a numerical simulation, your solutions will not converge. So therefore, what do we do in a turbulent flow? The turbulence theory has, since Reynolds proposed this, there have been many ways of the turbulence, approaching the turbulence. The first thing what he did was he averaged out the equations. He carried out an averaging, which again, I'm just telling you for information's sake, we'll not do the details of this again in this course. He carried out an averaging of the equations and wrote the equation for averaged quantity. So what he wrote was, he said velocity at any time, which is a function of x, y, z time, is written as an average velocity plus a fluctuation. So the fluctuation was supposed to be very small as compared to the average velocity. So it was u is equal to u bar plus u prime. Then what he said was, okay, let us write the equations for u bar alone. So this was fed in the original Navier-Stokes equations. Obviously, because you are putting a u prime, some of the u prime terms will also come in the equations. So then what happened was, wherever the nonlinear term comes, you say we'll neglect u prime squares and things like that. That gives you the stability theory. But when you talk of the turbulence theory, you're carrying out an average. So when you average out, if there's an average of u prime, that is 0. But if there's an average of u prime multiplied by another average, another prime quantity, that average will not be 0. So that creates a new type of stress which has been later on called as Reynolds stress. So all that we will leave for the next course. I'm leaving a lot of my job for the next course because here I'm just introducing things. So how to tackle turbulence we will see, not in this course, in the next course, or maybe there are separate courses for theories of turbulence which you can take and which are being floated. So, but now here, so, and in fact turbulence is such a complicated problem that I think one of the people, G.I. Taylor or someone who worked in fluid mechanics said finally, when I die and I meet God, if I meet him, he didn't do probably too many good things, but he said if I meet God, the only thing I would like to ask him is, how do I solve this problem of turbulence? Because it still analytically is an unclosed problem. It has not been solved. Only approaches we have for turbulence are numerical approaches. Try to make bigger and bigger computers. That is one approach. Other approaches try to refine the theory, maybe work out on theory. So these are areas of research where I have worked, other people have worked, has both experimental content, numerical content, analytical content. Whichever approach you want to use, there is enough to do in turbulence. So that is where people have been working. Now let's come back to our pipe flow. So in the pipe flow, what we find is, so first thing what we will do is we will take this 2300 as the transition between laminar and turbulent. Knowing very well that definitely if the flow is beyond 10,000 RE, it will become turbulent. It is this region between 2000 to 10,000 RE which is a gray area. So now in laminar flow what you observe is that the pressure drop in the pipe is proportional to delta V, is proportional to the average velocity. I used U or V? That's what I've used. Whereas in turbulent flow, pressure drop is proportional to and this, as the Reynolds number increases, goes up till about V square. You don't find a single value power. For laminar flow, this you can even see from your solutions which you got. We got delta P as a function of flow rate. And it turns out to be just a linear function. I'll put that exact function now. So it's proportional to the average velocity. But in turbulent flow, the pressure drop in the pipe is proportional to V square. So one of the problems with turbulent flows is that it requires more energy. You require more of energy requirements for the turbulent flow to take place, because for a given pressure drop, it keeps on increasing, and as V increases, the flow becomes turbulent. So you require more and more energy for the turbulent. But of course, what a turbulent flow, you can realize there is much more of diffusion in a turbulent flow. Because in a laminar flow, the flow is proceeding in a smooth way. In a turbulent flow, there is a lot of zigzag movement. So there is much more mixing. And of course, in daily life, we use this mixing. If I want to dissolve sugar in a cup of tea, I mix it. So basically, I'm creating turbulent flow there so that the sugar dissolves faster. If I leave it like that, I'm leaving it for just a natural diffusion process, which will take a long time. So I create turbulence so that it can dissolve faster. So things like this. But in turbulent flow, typically drag, etc. will be more, so you'll require more of energy. So now, let's see. So now here, delta P is basically, if this is P1, this is P2, delta P will be equal to the pressure drop in the pipe, which is equal to P1 minus P2. Now, let's look at laminar pipe flow. In laminar pipe flow, we have, now this the formula which we derived was Vz is equal to minus R square upon 4 mu P prime. This formula was derived in the assignment, I think tutorial sheet. We did the formula for flow between two plates in the class. This we have also done. The K which I wrote was written like this, and here P prime is P2 minus P1. It's not the pressure drop, it is the pressure gradient, which is P2 minus P1, whereas minus of P prime is what will be putting it in form of delta. So now here if we work out the shear stress, so this shear stress in the laminar flow, we can write it as tau Rz. This will be equal to mu dVz by dr, and this turns out to be equal to R by 2 times P prime, and flow rate is equal to integral Vz 2 pi R dr. So if we work out all these parameters in terms of P prime, we can get the shear stress, and we got this. And if P prime we write it as delta P upon L, then what we get is Q dot is equal to pi, I'm just copying it because these are the things which you can work out, delta P d4 it becomes 128 mu L because I've converted R to D. So maybe I'll write it clearly. And average velocity, if I want to work out, the average velocity works out to be equal to Q dot divided by the area. So this becomes equal to minus d square upon the minus sign comes, of course, because P prime has been defined as P2 minus P1. So now, if we think in terms of Bernoulli's equation, and if we write, and let's say, in fact, what I'm going to do is let me make it slightly more general. Let's write Bernoulli's equation between 1 and 2. Well, again we'll realize because the flow is not one it's changing with Z, we cannot write Bernoulli's equation, so we use some sort of engineering versions of this. So what we get is P1 by rho G plus so if we assume that the velocity profile is uniform, then to account for that we will have to put in some sort of a correction factor. This is called the kinetic energy correction factor, which is assuming if the flow, whatever is the energy, if this was divided over that area, so then we get this, and we assume the velocity to be the average velocity, then this is what we get. But now what happens is, if the flow was inviscid, then there would be no head loss. This would have been equal to 0. But because we have a viscous flow, so to account for viscosity, we introduce this term head loss. So in that sense, this could be seen as the engineering Bernoulli's equation, not the original Bernoulli's equation. So this is how we account for. So these head losses are basically due to pressure drop in viscous flow. So this is basically an engineering version of Bernoulli's equation. So here let me also mention a couple of things. Alpha is the kinetic energy correction factor to account for variation of V with area. We are using V bar. For all points in the section at 1, we are using V1 bar, but it is different. So to account for that, we have the kinetic energy correction factor. In a horizontal pipe, now this is the sort of thing which will happen. If it's a fully developed flow, then V1 and V2 will be equal. The flow will not change. Z1 is equal to Z2. So we get the pressure drop is what causes the head loss, and this pressure drop is caused by viscosity. Because the flow has to overcome a certain viscosity, and that viscous changes or that viscous losses have to be provided for by the pressure. So the pressure is overcoming viscosity, and this is what we saw in the exact solution also, that there is no acceleration in a pipe flow, in a fully developed flow. So the pressure gradient is basically accounting for the head loss. So now let's see, in laminar flow in a pipe, we actually have a formula for this. We have already seen that delta P is equal to 128 mu q upon pi d4. So this we can work it out as it will be 128 mu L V bar pi d square upon 4 divided by pi d4, and this, when I work out this pressure drop, turns out to be 32 times L by D mu times V bar upon D, and the head loss, which is equal to delta P by rho G, becomes equal to 32 times L by D mu V bar upon rho G D, and this we are rewriting it as you will sort of think, why am I doing this sort of playing around with it? It's all very trivial type of things. Why am I writing it in this form? So basically, one thing what I'm trying to do is I'm writing everything in terms of head loss, which is delta P upon rho G. And then what I have done is I'm expressing it as a function of Reynolds number. And what you find is, at least if I write it in this form, for laminar flow in a pipe, you get the head loss is equal to 64 upon Re. Re is always based on diameter, times L by D times V square by 2G. Now here if you look at it, V square by 2G has dimensions of length, which is the dimension of head loss also. So that means 64 upon Re is dimensionless and L upon D is also dimensionless. Now why I am doing this will become clear in a minute. So in a laminar flow we have like this. Now what we find is, in a laminar flow, if you look at some of the things, let me write some characteristics of laminar flow. Firstly, what we find is delta P is proportional to V bar. This I have written earlier also. It is proportional to the average velocity, and then also we find that it is also proportional to L by D. Now, when I write it in this form, these two seem contradictory, because there is a V bar here and this says V bar square. But then the contradiction is taken care of by the Reynolds number, because that has a V bar here. So why am I playing this game? What is the need to do this? And for that, let's see. So in a laminar flow also, if we look at, if I look at the velocity profile, the velocity profile is parabolic. Now let us compare this to turbulent flow. In a turbulent flow, what you find is, if I look at, when we talk of turbulent flow, we know at each point the velocity is changing with time rapidly. So we talk of an average velocity, which is basically at each point, if you take the data at 500 time steps and you average that. So this average velocity is different from the average velocity in a section of a pipe. So in a turbulent flow, we plot, or I should, in fact, let me use the term instead of average, I will use, so that there is no confusion, I will talk of mean velocity, which means you average velocity
over time. Strictly speaking, it will not even be time average, but this we will see in the turbulence course. So now what we find in a turbulent flow, if I look at the profile, the average mean velocity profile this is much fuller, which means in the earlier case it was an exact parabola. Here what you find is over a very small distance it almost becomes maximum, it is a full range and then it comes back to zero. It becomes, so therefore the gradients near the wall are much higher in a turbulent flow. And this is obviously for the average mean profile, because at each point the profile will keep on changing. So in a turbulent profile we don't get a parabolic profile. We get a profile which we call, and again this is termed as a power law profile, which is something like 1 minus r by r to the power n, where n will vary with Reynolds number. It is not a simple square profile. So now what we do is we do a dimensional analysis and we say delta P, the pressure drop in a pipe, we work this out. This is a function of diameter, this is a function of length, this is a function of V bar, this is a function of rho, it's a function of viscosity. These all we will expect. But then one more parameter which comes in turbulent flow, which does not come in laminar flow, is the pipe roughness. In a turbulent flow, the pressure drop will depend on whether the pipe surface inside is smooth or rough. In a laminar flow, it doesn't matter. For smooth or rough profile, you still get the same formula. But in a turbulent flow, it is also a function of the roughness. So given all these parameters, we do a dimensional analysis. So we choose rho V bar D as the repeating variables, and when we do this, so we get delta P upon rho V square. This will be a function of, now D doesn't come into picture, L will give me L by D, V bar rho will not come, mu will give me mu upon rho V bar D, epsilon will give me epsilon upon D. Can everyone work this out directly as I have seen? This is what we have done in the last chapter. And this is how we are using this. I choose rho V bar D, that means 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 minus 3. So I'll get 4 pi numbers. Now delta P, these are my repeating variables, rho V bar D. How do I build a non-dimensional number? Rho V square and delta P have the same dimensions. So directly I'm writing this. Then second thing, I don't need D. The first variable I use on the right hand side is L by D directly. Then I go to V bar, I don't need, rho, I don't need the other repeating variables. Mu, I work out a Reynolds number, mu by rho VD. So I've written that, or I could even write it as rho VD by mu. And then epsilon by D directly. So in cases like this, you don't even have to carry out that M0, L0, T0. You can directly do it. Now let's see. Now what we know is, now one thing we find is in all fully developed flows, laminar or turbulent, and this is something you would expect. The pressure drop in a fully developed flow should be directly proportional to the length. Yes? I should have specified that. Epsilon is called the mean square roughness.
So basically it's something like you establish a mean range, and then you see how, on an average, how much up or down you are from that surface. If the surface is rough, then from the mean level it will be either up or down. You take the mean square of that, root of that RMS value of the roughness factor. So over the length of the pipe. So therefore epsilon is dimensions of length. It tells you how much on an average you are either up or down from the average surface. So epsilon is called roughness factor, and this for typical, in a new pipe roughness factor will be low. In an older pipe it will be high, because as the pipe gets corroded you will have more and more roughness. And the value for this for different materials, for example for brass you will expect this to be low, whereas for steel, for this pipe which we have in, what is it called, the one we have at home, not PVC will be again low, but for these steel pipes, what is it? It is a particular, it's not stainless steel, it's so these are GI pipes, galvanized iron pipes. So that is higher. And in fact, we don't do these experiments anymore for you people. Otherwise, there's a beautiful experiment in the fluid mechanics lab where you actually calculate these pressure drops. All you have to do is you connect the two ends to the same manometer, you'll get the pressure drop, and you, at the end of the pipe, you measure the flow rate, so you can establish the relation between this. Okay, so now let me just come back to this. If delta P is proportional to L, how can I simplify this relation? That means, see, delta P is occurring in only one pi group, L is occurring only in one pi group, so I can pull this out. Because delta P, so that means, if that is so, what I can say is, delta P upon rho V square is equal to L by D times function of Reynolds number and epsilon by D. So now, if I work out delta P upon rho G, this will be function of if I now rework this, so I divide both sides by L by G, take the rho V square on the other side. So I will get delta P upon rho G is a function of this function which I don't know, times L by D times V square by 2G. Now 2 we have added because of Bernoulli's equation. See, this is dimensional analysis, so the function, one function and the other function are related by factor of 2. So this, once we do it like this, then this one is valid for all flows. Now here F is what we call as, F is called as the friction factor. And what we get is, for laminar flow, F is equal to 64 upon Re, independent of epsilon upon D, and for turbulent flow, F is a function of two things, Reynolds number and epsilon upon D. So now, in the next class what we will see is, if we have to use this. And actually this became important because pipe flows is an important topic. So this correlation has been plotted, and we will see that in tomorrow's class. I will give you what's called Moody's chart. I will give that diagram to you where all these are correlated.